Hari Om friends, welcome to the 16th and the last part of the Battle of Raichur series. In this part, I won't have any slides, so I'll be talking about the aftermath of the battle. Now, remember, at the beginning of the series, I said the Raichur War. So, the war went on even after this key battle. So, it didn't end here, and I'll talk a little bit about it as well. Now, this was a great tactical victory, and it was a complete disaster for the Bijapuri army. I've used the word tactical quite deliberately and explain, towards the end of this presentation. Now, there is no number for the dead on the Bijapuri side. So, how many soldiers died? But taking even the most conservative estimate of 30% of their army getting destroyed, it amounts to nearly 42,000 dead. And in addition to the loss, the human loss, the Bijapur army also lost a vast amount of material because they pretty much abandoned everything on the battlefield and then they had to run towards the river. So the Vijayanagar army captured a massive amount of war booty. This included 400 large cannons, and in earlier parts of the series we have seen the sizes of some of the bigger cannons. Many small ones, 900 gun carriages, 4,000 Arabian horses, countless pack animals, tents, pavilions, jewelry, clothes, a lot of stuff. The Vijayanagar forces, their loss was not insignificant as well. So they lost around 16,000 soldiers. Quite a big loss, but obviously the Bijapuri loss was almost more than double that. And most of the casualties were during the ferocious artillery fire by the Bijapuri cannons. So Krishnadevaraya, being the great emperor that he was, he made sure that those Vijayanagar warriors who had attained Virgati or who had died a hero's death, they were given proper cremation with all military honors. And he also distributed a lot of arms, donations in memory of those who had fallen in battle. Now, he was an extremely humane person with captured prisoners, and this was the case with all Hindu kings, especially the great ones like Maharana Pratap, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, all the Vijayanagar emperors. And this is one of the key reasons why Hindu rulers and Hindu society was caught by surprise and shock, when Abrahamic invaders like, the Christian British or the Muslims, won battles because they had a scorched earth policy. Their policy was to pretty much annihilate everyone and anyone and just kind of bloodied everybody into submission. So, one thing all Hindu rulers have done, those who have followed the Hindu doctrine of war, is they make sure that women and children are not touched. So even with Krishnadevaraya, he made sure that the captured women. So a lot of women from Adil Shah's harem were captured, and the camp had a lot of civilians. So traders, their families, workers, their families, and so on. Because for every soldier, there are at least two or three people who are in a supporting role, and he made sure that they were returned honorably to their homes. Now, contrast this with the Muslim behavior, where they lose no opportunity to conduct mass rapes of Hindu women and distribute them like cattle after the male members of the family have been killed. And this has been demonstrated time and time again, the most recently being in the 1971 war in Bangladesh. And in Bangladesh and Pakistan, this goes on unabated. After the battle, it was business as usual. Because remember, Raichur fort had still not fallen. So Adil Shah, who had come to the relief of Raichur fort, he was defeated, but the fort itself was still strong and they had a lot of supplies. And the siege of the fort dragged on as usual. But Nunes mentions an interesting incident which changed the complexion of the siege in favor of Krishnadevaraya. So the interesting incident which Nunes mentioned is the arrival of Cristoveo the Figueiredo. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. It's a Portuguese name. He was a Portuguese captain and he arrived with a group of 20 musketeers. So his mission was actually to sell horses to the Vijayanagara emperors, especially Krishnaraya. So he had brought along horses to sell. And the Portuguese were mercenaries. Now, if you remember Salabat Khan, who was a commander on the Bijapuri side, he had 500 Portuguese mercenaries and they made a very brave attempt to kill Krishnadevaraya, but all of them were annihilated except Salabat Khan. And he offered the services of his sharpshooters. So Christopher offered the service of his sharpshooters, and they picked off the defenders on the Raichur fort one by one. Now, Even this didn't make a big difference, but the lucky break came when the governor of Raichur, who was very curious to see what was going on, so he kind of peeked over the ramparts, and one of the Portuguese sharpshooters got him. With their leader gone, the defenders surrendered within days, because obviously no help was going to come from Adil Shah or any of the Deccan sultanates. The governor was gone as well. Now, with Nunes' account, this could very well be a case of Nunes playing up the role of the Portuguese for the benefit of readers back in Portugal. And now, remember, these accounts were written for an audience which was very ignorant of the outer world, and they were still burning women at stake in Europe at that point of time, especially in Spain and Portugal. Now, which is why we need to be very careful and not look at our history through a Western lens. So just take this with a pinch of salt. For me, it's a bit difficult to believe that 20 sharpshooters could bring down an entire fort. Not unheard of, but like I said, take this with a pinch of salt. Now, once Raichur fort fell, Krishnaraya departed for Vijayanagar and he set up a strong garrison in Raichur before he went. So this titanic battle and Adil Shah's wipeout sent shockwaves through the Muslim sultanates in India, especially the Deccan ones who were in close proximity. So they were Golconda, Ahmednagar, Berar, and Bidar. While they were no friends of Adil Shah, these people used to hate each other. They could see the threat to their power, so they asked Krishnaraya to return, Raichur back. But Krishnaraya basically told them to get lost, and they couldn't do anything because he was much more powerful than all of them combined. Now, further to this, again, remember I was talking about the Raichur War. Krishnaraya marched up to Bijapur and captured the city as well. But this was again, typical, Indian story or the Hindu story, where he kind of restored Bijapur and took the title of, somebody who established the Muslim rulers. So there was, I don't think at any stage there was any idea to wipe out the Muslim sultanates, even Bijapur, root and branch. So the general idea was to kind of pummel them into submission and then, make sure that they didn't rise up against Vijayanagara. Now, I call this a tactical victory because, much like the fruitless wars we have been waging since 1947, there is no strategic result, or there was no strategic result. So take the example of 1947, 48, 65, 71, Kargil, or even recently the Operation Sindoor. So gains are on a purely tactical level, and these are very quickly squandered away. The aftermath of the Raichur War, Bijapur was allowed to survive and it slowly rebuilt its strength. Eventually, over 4 decades, the Muslim sultanates kind of combined by means of marriage alliances and so on. And they finally delivered the crushing blow at the Battle of Rakshasatangdi or Talikota in 1565. Just to kind of close this presentation, I'll just recite a Sanskrit Shubhashita, which is a good saying, and hopefully I get the pronunciation right. While we have a million Sanskrit Subhashitas, we fail to internalize almost all of them. So here is one which is very relevant. So it says, Agnishesham Runashesham Shatrushesham Tathaivacha Punah Punah Pravardhet Tasmat Shesham Na Karayet. Which means, just like if you don't extinguish a fire properly, so even if you leave a single ember burning, it will eventually set fire to your whole house. Just like that, if you leave the enemy alive, if you don't exterminate the enemy root and branch, the enemy will rise again and kill you or knock you out. And this is what the British or the Abrahamic or the Anglo-Saxons, they do. So they have actually internalized this kind of subhashita or the good wise saying, and they usually exterminate their enemy root and branch where possible. So you can see what was done to Japan and Germany after the Second World War. So I will end with this. This is the end of the Raichur series. If you have liked this video, please do remember to share, like, and subscribe. I will continue producing more videos. So Hari Om, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.